probably one of the most versatile things in this game. Night Elf or Human, and they're both very viable and very strong. As you can see, Insom using his Sork to hunt down priests. Extremely effective, very powerful way of utilizing the priest. So now he's staffing out his priest, just trying to keep him alive, trying to slowing down Insom's army, because he does have a Sork push coming his way. He has Shriek has lost a lot of footmen this game. Losing so many footmen, he really doesn't have much of a tier 3 army at this point. Whereas SK Insomnia has 3 priests, 2 Sorks, and 5 foots, along with a level 2 borderline level 3 panda. That's quite the push. So as you're going to see, Shriek is going to need to delay as much time as he can for some knights, and you know, that sort of thing, try and keep himself stable. He does do a little scouting here on the bottom of his MK. It never hurts to scout. However, on the bottom right-hand corner, Insom has begun his expansion that he crept right before TPing to his base early on in the game. Whenever you're going Tier 2, especially versus Tier 3, and I would say even in Tier 2 Breaker Wars, you want to be making an expansion. Expansions are oftentimes the requirement. If you're going to have a Tier 2 army and they're going to have a Tier 2 army, let's say you have 5 foots apiece, you both have level 1 secondary heroes, your armies won't be able to do that much to each other. So you can generally safely put up an expansion. And if you're worried about not being able to put in an expansion, you can maybe go Fire Lord, push their base, do some damage, cripple them a bit so that they can't push you back. And once you can do that, you can safely set up an expansion with little to no worries. So I would say, generally speaking, in Human Mirror, you want to be doing those Tier 2 expansions and you want to be getting that econ advantage because, again, it is a mirror. As you'll see here, at about the 10-minute and 30-second mark, Insom has begun his tech to Tier 3. He is figuring right about now it would be easier to beat a Tier 3 army if he had some Griffins. And I do thoroughly agree, Griffins are quite the pwn versus Knights, Mortars, and Priests, considering there is no major anti-air in that Tier 3 army. Earlier, or maybe later, I'm not sure when, Shriek will preemptively research flat cannons, but SK Insomnia does a great job hiding. Okay, so this is great Sork abuse right here. He's going to be essentially just ignoring the knights. This is one of the most important things, because people go, man, I can't kill those knights. Slowed knights do not have DPS. They're a shitty source of DPS. There's next to nothing that's good about them. When they're not slowed, however, they're great. They have high armor. They tank for your army well. But the main thing that's happening here is slow and then just abusing that ability to slow down the units and essentially just focus down the weak portions of Shriek's army, which is one of the good things Tier 2 versus Tier 3 does. When you have Sorks and they can't toss it back at you with Spellbreakers, all they can do is Dispel, which is in limited numbers, Dispel costing way more than Sorcerer's Slow. I would say that you do have the ability to be able to just run past their knights. You slow them, and then what are they going to do, you know? Shriek sort of turned it around a bit here. SK Insomnia sort of ran past Shriek's army, which he really didn't have too much of a choice. He could have ran backwards, but again, he saw some good opportunities to maybe kill a mortar, maybe kill a couple priests, and he did take the risk. He lost a priest in the process, but that's okay. He does add some Spellbreakers for meat to his army, and he's going to be making a consistent amount, but mostly the important thing to concentrate is in your Sorks and your priests. Very important to have. If you notice, he manually slowed this mortar here, and he will be taking it out. Mortars are basically the main DPS source of a Tier 3 army. Knights are not the DPS source. If slow knights do nothing, they're tanks. They're tanks for your army, they have armor, they can be healed and then staffed. That's what you use them for. The Tier 3 army wants the opponent to focus the knights. With knights focused, like, their mortars can just rip up your shit, and like you won't be able to do anything about it. Okay, so pretty bad play here by Shriek, sorry to say. He lost a priest here, almost losing another, and if he would have gotten that knight slowed, he could have been in the troubles there too. Shriek just scouts the expansion of SK Insomnia. Whenever you scout something like this and you know you do not have the army to be able to like get an expansion and hold it, it's a problem. You need to take out the expansion, because the moment they're expanded and you're not, you're losing the game if you can't win right then. And basically what Shriek's going to try and do is going to try and gather up his forces, try and get his shit together, and just make a push at this base here. And it's basically he's going to do once he has a couple morts, and once he has successfully, you know, just gotten up a decent Tier 3 army. some object said looks good for Insom, and I would have to agree. Insom is doing an excellent job of controlling the map and keeping his army advantage high. One of the main things about using this strategy is that when you're going to be going tier 2, and if you're going to be expanding like this, which you should be, you're going to have an army advantage for the vast majority of the mid to like late mid game, and that's the point where you should be using your army to influence the map as much as possible. I define map control by making your presence known on the map. If they don't want to leave their base because they don't want to get owned, or if they don't want to creep this camp because you're right there, you're making a presence on the map, and you have the ability to influence the choices they make by where you are and the size of your army and what you're doing, and that is map control. There is no doubt in my mind that if I played the casual sort of not really gonna be too aggressive sort of player where I just went around creeping things, I would lose the game because I would just be the opponent's bitch. I would not be effectively using my units to fight him at opportune times. I would essentially just be dicking around on the map while he's creeping, getting the hero levels he wants for an army he wants to counter my army, which is a huge problem. Okay, here's the final battle. If you notice, Insomnia made 4 Griffins. 4 Griffins versus Mortars. Ouch. Shriek pretty quickly says GG here, but you see the first thing he does, he casts his Drunken Haze, Breath of Fire, shift-clicks all the Mortars and Priests with his Griffins. GG, sir. Shriek is out. A little poor scouting by Shriek, but, I mean, at the end of the day, Insom totally outplayed him in this game, and I mean, what can you expect? Insomnia is a world-class player, while Shriek is an excellent player himself. I just don't think he's on the level of SK Insomnia. The simple mistakes that he made early on really did cost him a lot. If you're going to be going tier 3, you're going to be in trouble if you're going to be losing all those footmen and all those peasants, and you're not going to have the army structure you need once you get to tier 3 to be able to sustain an equal balance in the game until you get your dream tier 3 army, which is what you're going for. Which is why I would say, if you lose a lot of footmen early, if your harass isn't as successful as you want it to be, don't go tier 3. Wait. Go tier 2, make an expansion, and go Breaker. That's a safe bet. If they're going to go tier 3, make Sorks and push their base. If they're not going tier 3, make Priests and dispel their water elementals, go MK, and just play Micro Wars with Breakers. That's your safest bet. And again, go tier 3 if you're positive you can. There's no reason to go tier 3 with 1 Footman, an Archmage, and a Panda, because you're going to get pushed by Sorks and raped. Period. End of story. You will lose doing that. You can't just have a set plan at the start of the game. You can't go, I'm going to go tier 3 this game because I'm in Human Mirror and that's what I do on this map or in this matchup. That isn't what Warcraft's about. It's a strategy game. You have to adapt. I think it was rather unwise of Shriek to go tier 3. I think it was a hasty decision that could have been avoided by just doing standard Breaker War and would have had a much better time versus Insomnia going MK and Breaker Wars as opposed to Insomnia's Panda. And he could have made an expansion for himself and maybe swung the game in his favor at some point. I would say Insomnia's Micro is better than Shriek, and while that does matter a lot, there's a lot of things you can get away with using MK Bolt Focus and Bolt Surrounds. So, I would say overall, this game shows a lot about tier 2 versus tier 3. I would suggest watching the replay again, maybe even another time after that, to see how Insomnia uses manual slow to slow all the knights, slow the mortars, kills the DPS, then runs past the knights of Shriek's army to get to the mortars and the priests, which are essentially the backbone of the tier 3 army. Okay, so that was my audio commentary for you guys. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. Peace.